Hi, my name's Dan. Whitesnake are a British hard rock band. They were formed in 1978. Initially, they were a backing band for David Coverdale, who uh, has come out of Deep Purple, which is another classic British rock band. And they became known as a band in their own right, effectively, with David Coverdale with them. He's been the one constant member throughout their time. They successfully took heavy rock into the 1980s, with taking some of the 1970s sound into the 80s kind of area. And they've had several hiatuses. Were kind of not very active since the end of the 90s, but they got back together again in 2003. And unlike some bands that have got together in the last 20 years since the millennium, who basically cashing in on the fact that there's nostalgia for them and basically have come back to tour, they have had four more studio albums since then. So this was Whitesnake's seventh album, and they were making a particular effort with this album to break into the American market. So they had a bit of a stylistic change from earlier stuff. It's known under two album titles. So in America, it was known as Whitesnake, or sold as Whitesnake. I guess effectively kind of establishing them. Very often, the first album from the band is an eponymous album named after the band, but in most of the rest of the world, it was known as 1987. So there are two different titles floating around. It's a pretty classic hard rock album. I've not heard it before. I did this review. It's not hugely surprising in any way. I did know of Whitesnake. I did know that they're this kind of hard slash heavy rock. So it's got everything that you might expect. It's got nice big screamy guitar riffs because it's the 80s. We've got lots of big synth stuff going on in there. The style kind of ranges from the hard rock end, which is very kind of guitar riffy stuff. I think of that as kind of the AC/DC end of the rock spectrum, to the soft rock end of a spectrum, so more kind of Journey kind of stuff. And they've had a couple of hits out of it, and they tended to be the more soft tracks there. Um, there's one track in the middle, Still of the Night, that reminds me of Led Zeppelin, and it's probably my favourite track in there just because it's stylistically a bit different from the others. The vocals are pretty decent uh, hard rock vocals. I wouldn't be able to pick his voice out of a lineup and say, that's specifically David Coverdale singing, but there's certainly nothing wrong with it. The songs generally are about love and sex, relationshipy stuff, kind of fairly classic hard rock subject matter. There's a song about rock and roll lifestyle. There's an obligatory song about rock or rock and roll. It's actually called Children of the Night, but it's the kind of refrain from it is "Are you ready to rock?" And so, every rock album of the 70s and 80s seemed to have at least one track which was, I love rock and roll, or something like this. And that's it in a nutshell. It's not a surprise. I do like a bit of 80s rock. I, as I said, I've not come across this before, and I quite enjoyed it.